Greetings, artist educators. I'm so glad that you're here with me today, sharing this time as we lean into spirituality in our education. This presentation was shared at the Pennsylvania Art Education Association State Conference in the fall of 2024 and is being shared at the National Art Education Association Conference in Louisville, Kentucky in March of 2025. And in Kentucky, acknowledging the land on which participants will gather, the native land that is the traditional territory of the Shawnee, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Osage, Seneca, Iroquois, Miami, Hopewell, and Adena, including many, many more. And we respect the legacy of Kentucky's original peoples as defenders and stewards of this land. We know that land acknowledgements are only a part of a living process of growing relationships and advocacy efforts. We strive to honor these memories of the traditional caretakers of these lands and unerase their stories. We acknowledge the longer history of these lands and our place in that history. And I hope that you'll learn more about the land that you live and work and play on. My name is Dr. Andrea McDonough, and I am a passionate leader in our education. I love all facets of pre-K through continuing education, regularly presenting content at the local, state, and national levels. I sit on the Leadership Council for the Pennsylvania Art Education Association. I serve as the secondary representative for the NAEA Caucus on the Spiritual in Art Education. I'm also a successful grant writer, and I advocate for public art production and the promotion of social and emotional learning through mindfulness and creativity in diverse education systems. My K through 12 team that I've dedicated so many years of service to lovingly refers to me as a fearless leader, and that's a badge of honor that I wear proudly. Today, we will start by grounding, just settling in. We'll figure out where we stand. We'll define and clarify some key terms and ideas, talk a little bit about practical applications. There will be an open discussion for the in-person presentation, and we'll end with gratitude. So this recording will serve as an overview, and those participants who are in person will have a more connected experience. So starting here, if you're not yet in a comfortable seat that allows you to put your feet flat on the ground, please find that space right now. Adjusting your posture, perhaps sliding to the edge of your chair if you need to allow your feet to be flat on the ground. Sitting up tall, but not trying too hard. Roll the shoulders up, back, and down. Perhaps doing that 2 more times. Roll the shoulders up, back, and down. Releasing any tension that you might be holding in the neck and shoulders, and letting your shoulders relax and rest away from your ears. Imagine that there's a ribbon that flows through your spine, and someone's pulling that ribbon up through the crown of your head just to lift the spine a little bit taller. Bring your chin to neutral. Relax your jaw. Soften the space between your eyebrows, and that might mean unfurrowing your brow if you tend to furrow the brow. And just connect to your breath here. If it feels good, go ahead and close your eyes or soften your gaze and look down off the tip of your nose towards the ground or towards a table. Connecting with your breath, you might choose to follow the visual on screen, inhaling as the circle expands and exhaling as the circle contracts. Following that pace, or just noticing the pace of your breath. The rhythm of full and complete inhalation, full and complete exhalation. Noticing what it feels like to breathe. Enjoying the quality of your breath, whatever that may be in this present moment. Settling into the space and using our breath as an anchor to ground us, to comfort us, to secure us in this present moment. And wherever you are, just take one more complete inhalation, filling the lungs to capacity. And exhale, let it go. If you close your eyes, you might flutter them open. Coming back to the space and just knowing that you're here. So in our in-person session, and whether you're at home or remotely connecting here, take a moment to either record by writing down in a journal or just mentally noting. Describe your spiritual practice and how it influences your professional role or how it influences your personal life. So consider, what is your spiritual practice or one of your spiritual practices, and how does it influence you in your professional life if you're called to share that. So just take a moment and think or record. If you are on screen tuning in virtually, just pause the recording and take some time to dive in. And in person, we'll share that information out. And just thinking about, what is spirituality to you before we define it, and how does it influence what you do? The Caucus on the Spiritual in Art Education defines spiritual as matters related to the spirit or soul. This includes investigating the mysteries of life and beyond, self-realization, consciousness, rituals, well-being, and contemplative practices. And the work of Lisa Miller and the Awakened Schools Institute is really fascinating, and some of the research that she's done really pinpoints where spirituality might be programmed in our human brains. The secular human experience can be a spiritual one. While religion can be one avenue towards spirituality, we can be spiritual without organized religion and through practices such as meditation, for example. So Miller found that there's a positive correlation between cortical thickness and the importance in individual places on spirituality, religion, or meditation, seeing those as equal. Miller's work on locating the neural correlates of spiritual stress and neural responses indicates that our brains are wired for spirituality. Spiritual experiences share in common a perceived dissolution of the boundary between self and other, and a sense of union with something larger than oneself. And in a program that I viewed years ago, this really stuck with me. When we consider spirituality as shared language, we also might consider just being an artist or an art educator as sharing language, because some of what we talk about is really exclusive to our discipline. So in this show, Trevor Holden is a character and Abigail Paris is another character, and they're having this conversation. And Trevor says, most belief systems are just a shared vocabulary for people in search of meaning. I think maybe the important thing is just to believe in something. And Abigail says, "You mean something spiritual?" And Trevor says, "Something." Abigail says, "I don't believe in anything." And Trevor says, "Yeah, you do. You believe in humanity. You believe that our future is at stake." And Abigail says, "That's not spiritual." And Trevor says, "Yeah, it is." Universal human experiences that can be linked to spirituality include awe, collective effervescence, which will be explained, breath, mindfulness, nature, art and hierophany, and suffering. Last summer, I was blessed with the opportunity to traverse um, the mountains of Colorado and ended up at the summit of Mount Harvard. And the view, while it's captured in this photo, the feeling of being on the top of that peak and looking out, breathing in the air, having an experience, a shared experience with folks that were in that mission together. It's indescribable. And while this photograph brings back that memory and those feelings, it almost doesn't do it justice. So that feeling of being small and connected to something greater at the same time is awe. So it's being this tiny human on this large planet and knowing that there's something greater to connect with. Keltner suggests that going for a walk without any distractions might be considered an awe walk. Your heart might open, and that might be difficult for us to imagine just going on a walk and being open to receiving whatever it is that might be fascinating and full of wonder and surprise. And when we can disconnect and reconnect with those things we might be open to, it can be really, really powerful. Moments of awe are when we have a sense of wonder and experience of mystery that transcends our understanding. Awe brings the heartbeat, breath, and nervous system all into sync. I love live music. And there's nothing quite like, pushing your way up through a crowd and feeling the rhythm of a song that everyone knows, and the crowd is pulsing together and dancing together, and being in this space and sharing the same energy and vibration. And that feeling is collective effervescence. It's connected to interaction ritual theory from the early 1900s. And collective effervescence is a shared experience that forms the collective conscious. Do you know that we laugh 5 times harder when we are with a group of people? When I laugh at the reel or TikTok or short clip that is on my feed, I might chuckle, I might giggle, but if I'm sharing that in a group of people, I'm going to laugh harder. We can have these moments of collective effervescence when we're at a football stadium and cheering for our team together with a sea of people, when we're at a concert, when we're in church. And there's something to the emotion contagion that really affects and influences that experience when we're in community and having a celebratory or even grief stricken experience. There's collective effervescence there. I also love yoga. And somewhere in this sea of people in a greenhouse, I am leading this beautiful group of humans, probably on a Saturday morning. And when we breathe together through a practice like yoga, that prana, which is Sanskrit for energy, life, or breath, this life force energy, vital energy, pranayama is breath control. And we can only breathe in this present moment. Our breath is here, it's right now. If we can bring awareness to our breath and connect, we have the power to alter the brain and the body. We can slow things down. We can control our heart rate, our blood pressure. It's powerful. And it's also personal, it's universal, and a lost art that's often overlooked by medical professionals. We forget that we have this power. The ancient Greeks thought that without breath, there is no thought, and without thought, there is no life. So, prana, this life, this breath, this energy. From 2019 until 2024, I was honored to have an experience of designing and instructing in the secondary school a course that I entitled Mindful Art, and bringing mindfulness into the lives of adolescents is a really, really special experience. And one of the ways that we tapped into mindfulness to make it a little bit more achievable, attainable, tangible, it was to bring in writing and stream of consciousness writing, or even writing song lyrics. So just tapping into the flow state by moving pencil or pen to paper, and just being present. So mindfulness is a part of every wisdom tradition, every religion. Mindfulness is paying attention on purpose in the present moment without judgment. And that's Jon Kabat-Zinn's definition, that's standard definition. Mindfulness can be meditation, it can be washing the dishes, it can be yoga, it can be making art. So mindfulness is a way of being. It's not a tool. It's not a prescription. It's a way of being here. Creative mindfulness takes the natural mindfulness that arises out of a creative activity, such as painting, drawing, weaving. And creative mindfulness also directs the mindfulness at the maker. So it allows us as the creators to turn the awareness towards the experience. So if I am painting, what does the paintbrush feel like in my hand? What can I notice about that? What are the qualities? What is the weight? What are the smells? What are the sounds? What does it feel like to drag my paintbrush across the canvas or the paper? What are all of those sensations? So it's not just being in that moment and painting, and that will help to tap into flow state, as Csikszentmihalyi brought into our lives. But it's also turning that awareness specifically to the artist experience. Mindfulness can enhance interoception and proprioception. So this awareness of what's happening within our bodies, that noticing that opportunity, and then also noticing or knowing our body in space relation to the things around us. So that's like that internal and external awareness. Last summer, I was able to travel with my daughter, and which is a special thing in and of itself, just having that connection and that ability to spend time and be present and adventure with her. And one of our greatest adventures was exploring some of the cenotes in Mexico. And walking into or down through a cave and being in a space that was so sacred and held so much historical tradition and ritual and energy was an experience in and of itself. The beauty and the mystery that was involved in being in that space. And nature, art, hierophany can really allow us that opportunity to tap into spirituality. Being in nature in and of itself can be a spiritual experience. Appreciating art, making art, being surrounded by beauty can influence our mood, and it can evoke awe. It's all connected. Looking at art or observing in nature can also be a spiritual experience. And just to explain hierophany, which could be connected to other terms that folks might be familiar with, but it's the way the divine reveals itself. When we make an object the subject of our worshipful attention, that's hierophany. And we can do that with many things, that we find in nature or that we hold close to us or important to us within our homes, our workspaces, or our personal spaces. Suffering. So when we recognize there is a sacredness in tears, they are not a mark of weakness, but of power. They speak more eloquently than 10,000 tongues. They are the messengers of overwhelming grief, of deep contrition, and of unspeakable love. There is suffering, and suffering exists. It's what we need to acknowledge, and that is a universal feeling and reality. In terms of Buddhism, and I often remind myself and others that when we're talking about mindfulness in particular, and some elements of how we connect mindfulness to spirituality, it's really important to not take Buddhism out of it. And in Buddhism, the first noble truth is that ordinary existence is a state of suffering. There are three types of suffering: physical suffering, impermanence, and mental suffering. And because that is something that we do experience universally, it allows us, it reminds us that we're human. That's one way that we can connect to spirituality and to each other. So I do think that having this human experience, there are these three lenses and three pillars, if you will, that help me to make sense of the interconnectedness of what that means for me in terms of an art practice, of connecting to art education, and reminding myself to connect to my source. So, and maybe this resonates with you, and maybe this is something that you'll marinate on for a bit. Art is the creative quality that makes us human. When in the age of AI and the potential threat, AI is not human and it is not creative. We are as human beings. So we develop novel and innovative content. We make, and that is what makes us human. So that ability to experience and to create art is what makes us human. Mindfulness, as I stated before, is the way of being that keeps humans connected and anchored in the moment, which is the best place to be. So art is the quality that makes us human. Mindfulness is the way of being that keeps us here. And spirituality is the question of all of it. It's what does it mean to experience this human life, this human condition? So going through each day and connecting professionally and personally, these three pillars become really, really important to me, and maybe to you as well. Now, in person, we'll go through and discuss these practical applications in classrooms. And so mindfulness is a great way to tap into a potential mode of spirituality in the classroom, if that makes sense for you. I think with anything that we bring into the classroom, whether it's mindfulness, social emotional learning, SEL, yoga, community building, whatever that is, when we understand it for ourselves as educators, that allows us to bring it in a holistic and authentic way. If we think, well, I want to test this, or I'm supposed to do this, or I'm told that I must do this, and it's not authentic and it doesn't, and if we as the adults, as the leaders, as the educators don't have a thorough understanding of what that means and how that sits with us, it becomes really difficult to holistically, authentically communicate that to children, to students. So mindfulness can be brought in so many different ways: short videos, breathing together, inhaling, raising the arms up, and exhaling, floating the fingertips back down, doing that 3 times just to come into the moment. Reminding students to pay attention on purpose, going for a mindful walk, slow looking, right? So spiritual looking, slow looking, slowing things down. the exploration of emotion, even spirituality through project-based approaches, yoga. And again, if it's not your comfort level, but it's your interest, bringing in something like Cosmic Kids into an elementary classroom, that's, something that's really playful and maybe high energy or low energy. The Connected Arts Network and culturally responsive teaching. So I mentioned CAN because of the work that they're doing with SEL and EDI. And culturally responsive teaching is one way to incorporate different elements that give students autonomy and voice and understanding in the greater scope. And so there can be really beautiful things that drive or modify curriculum that can be connected through there. Cultivating community is always a good thing, and even tapping into that feeling of collective effervescence, that notion that we're in it together, making these connections, whether it's a cultural connection, a spiritual connection, a classroom connection, supporting discussion on spirituality explicitly or on any of the aforementioned concepts. Tapping into spirituality through explicit lessons in history and art history can be another great starter, lesson starter, or just opportunity to practice strong and healthy and clear communication in the classroom. Having open dialogue on all of these things and opening up the conversation to religion can be really, really powerful. For students that I've worked with over the years that have taught me so much about their religious practices and our language overlaps, terms that mean something to one religion that also means something as a different term in mindfulness or my spiritual practice. Having those conversations can be such a beautiful way to connect and see our students and be seen by our students as well. And practicing professional judgment within all of that, I think, is easy. So, in light of everything that has been covered here, the opportunity for reflection exists. And so, if you are at home or in a different space and you are taking all of this in, take a moment to reflect. Think about what you're taking away from this conversation and how can I support you? How would you like to be supported in learning more or applying this work to your professional or academic role? Where does it sit for you? So feel free to press pause or just to take some time to journal as we close out here. And I am a big fan of The Bear, the series. And in season 3, episode 10, there is a character that leaves us with a really important message. And she says, "We live in a world that's increasingly in need of a little more magic." And maybe that's what spirituality is for you. And maybe that's something that we can intentionally bring into learning experiences, whether it's implicit because it's just who we are and we teach who we are, or maybe it's directing those conversations and really tapping into these questions of being human or the human way of being in the present moment through mindfulness or being a creative human through any art practice. So wherever we find that magic, just cultivate it and tap into it and enjoy it. So thank you so much for your attention, your presence. And if you would choose to scan this QR code, it will take you to some spaces where you can stay connected to me. And on that page, you'll find some links to conference presentation information where you'll find this slide deck, and you could review this reference list if you're looking to dive in further with any of the concepts that have been mentioned. Thank you so much for being here and for leaning into spirituality in art education with me today.